God created their brains to soak in information.
Yeah.
And when we expose our kids to information, they are going to learn.
So it sounds like unit studies are a really good way to do kind of the one room schoolhouse type of teaching with your kids, because you can, and you
Yes.
talked a little bit about that on Monday about using it for multiple ages and how you can,
Hmm.
cater to every different age group.
Hmm.
And again, maybe not so much if you've got a third grader and an 11th grader, but still you can use this in different ways. Were you ever able to bring in, or I should say, did you bring in other curriculum in with your unit studies? I would assume you probably used a separate math
Yes.
curriculum, but did you use other
Form,
like science and history and things like that? I know you did library books and YouTube videos and things like that, but
mhm.
did you use other curriculum?
We did formal math and formal reading because a
Okay.
unit study is not really going to teach your child to read if they, I would say every now and then, and I happen to have this kiddo that early three, he was learning to read. I
Hmm.
happen to be an early reader, so I wasn't surprised, but that's not typical. It just happens to be
Sure.
that's the way the Lord made his brain. But typically, you're going to read, teach your kiddo to read with a phonics program,
Right.
a learning a topic, I mean a curriculum, excuse me, for phonics, and then formal math. And
Right.
then what you would do in your unit study is applied language arts. So you would practice quotation marks around dialogue or looking for a comma so that you know breaks in your sentences. So you could use it for grammar as
Mhm.
opposed to write 10 sentences and circle, put a punctuation mark at the end of every sentence. I mean, those things that we all did in public school and they're super boring. And,
Yeah.
I guess they taught us all grammar at some point, but they're not very inspiring. Um, and then formal phonics to teach them to read. And then generally you need a formal math program.
Hmm.
However, we don't have to start that when they're 5 years old.
Right.
They
Yeah.
really don't need to be starting. God created their brains to soak in information. And
Yeah.
when we expose our kids to information, they are going to learn. They're
Yes.
going to learn so much without us throwing stuff at them because they're 6 and they're supposed to learn this now,
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that way. So I would say wait until they're really ready.
Yes.
And a tiny little teacher tip, or maybe special ed teacher tip, if you're beating your head against the wall about a concept and you sit down every day and they're not getting it, they're not ready to learn it.
Yeah.
So set it aside, try again in a month or 6 weeks and see if they're ready for it then because their brains don't all develop at the same time. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's such good advice. And I think that's definitely not just for, special needs
mhm,
learners. That's definitely for every kid because every kid has their weaknesses in some areas.
yeah,
I
and they're
didn't,
all unique.
they are all unique. I didn't start my girls really in formal math lessons until about second to third grade,
Mhm,
but we did math stuff. Like, I mean, we talked
yep,
about numbers and we would add up, sticks or rocks or what, I mean, like just general math things so that they understood what math was,
mhm,
but we didn't actually start super, well, I should say with Lacey. We started probably around third grade and she was super ready for it. I mean, she loved it.
mhm.
But before that, we just did, I don't know, fun math things. I just didn't feel like she needed that at
Yeah.
that early of an
Well,
age.
our world is full of numbers, and when
Yeah.
our when you start thinking about those things, one of our favorite things we did that wasn't any formal math, we went to the beach, we collected a whole bunch of seashells. And so then we brought them all home. We didn't do any of this stuff when we were at the beach because who wants to do that at the beach?
Right.
So we came home and we sorted all of the seashells because generally you have about 10 different kinds of seashells at the beach, in a certain area. We sorted them all. We made a bar graph of our seashells. And that was one of our favorite things we ever did in school. And they're climbing all over the table and which one has more. And then you can sort them all by size and
Yeah.
how many do you have of each? And then if you have this many and then this, how many more do you have? There's so much you can come up with. None of
Yes.
that was a formal math. Now, we could do all of that in a workbook with a pencil and paper.
Right.
But this way, my kids are engaged, they're physically engaged, they're not sitting with a pencil and a paper. We're interacting, we're touching, we're
Hmm.
smelling, we're remembering that
Hmm.
time at the beach. So it's just such a great way to love learning, exploring, and getting connected with the world that God created.
Yeah. I think a lot of times, when we talk about these things, it frightens moms who maybe aren't bent that way. You know,
Mhm.
they're not the type who naturally can think of and come up with teaching opportunities. But I'm going to say, because that's not me, that's not really how I'm wired either. But I've learned in my 11 and a half years of homeschooling, I've taught myself how to do that. And not that I
Mhm.
do it perfectly, but I want to encourage the mom who's like, well, I don't know how to come up with, you know, graphing all the seashells and figuring out which kind of seashells we have and stuff. That's one of the greatest parts of homeschooling, is that you learn along with your kids. And so
Mhm.
you're learning how to teach them as well.
Mhm.
And I think we don't give ourselves enough credit sometimes in realizing that we have the ability to do this. It's just we weren't taught how to do this. And so we're learning along with our kids.